Hey YouTube, this video is a short video of which frame shape is best for quadcopters if you're building your own quadcopter. And there are many shapes that you could choose if you're choosing to build your own frame. So let's talk about the different shapes and which shape do I prefer, and this is my personal opinion. There are many different shapes you could choose. The first is the X-shape frame. Now the pros to the X frame is that it has the best symmetry, and so it'll probably be a little bit more stable than your other shapes. Now the only drawback to the X-frame shape is that it has a very small center area where you can actually mount your equipment. And if you're just basically doing a quadcopter build with no FPV video transmitter and camera and all that stuff, and you're basically going to fly at line of sight, then it's okay, because there's not a whole lot of place where you can mount anything. And the battery you would have to place either at the bottom, or you would have to build something on top to mount the battery. And so the X shape has the best symmetry, probably will be easiest to center so that it will be stable. However, it has the smallest area that you can mount your equipment and battery. And so that's why I'm not a big fan of the X shape, even though it flies pretty good. Now the next shape is the I shape, where the arms are straight. This also flies very well. It's very stable. Maybe not quite as stable as the X, but it's very stable. But the advantage is that look at this long area where you can actually mount your battery and flight controller and camera, video transmitter, and everything else. And so you don't have to build up over the frame so that you could fit everything on there. The weight is about the same as the X. You use about the same amount of wood, so there's not a whole lot of difference in weight. It's also the easiest to build. You don't have to make accurate cuts or anything. You just have 3 straight pieces of wood or whatever you're going to use. And so this has some pros, that it has such a big space where you can mount everything. The next shape is the H shape. And this also has some space where you could put it sideways like this, mount the equipment. However, it's not very stable, especially when you're pitching forward and pitching backwards. And so the H shape doesn't fly as stable as compared to the X or the I shape. And so the H shape is not a really good idea. It's not a shape that you want to use, even though it's easy to build. It's not very stable. You also have the shape where the arms are about 120 degrees apart, 60 degrees here, 60 degrees there, and it gives you a decent amount of area here where you can mount your battery and flight controller and video transmitter and camera. And so a lot of people like the 120 degrees approach, And it's pretty symmetrical and it flies pretty well. Some people prefer this over the eye shape because it's more aesthetically pleasing. And so this is a pretty good idea when you want to build your own frame, this approach right here. You also have the 90 degrees where the arms are separated at 45 degrees from the perpendicular, each arm. And this isn't quite as stable as the 120 degrees or the eye or the X shape. And so I'm not a big fan of this 90 degrees approach, plus you also have a very limited area here where you can mount your equipment. Another approach that I see a lot these days are like the alien type shapes where the front arms are spaced further apart, 120 degrees, and then the back arms are a little bit more angled at 90 degrees gap here. This would be more like the alien or even the Q330 type frame, like this. And the flight characteristics of this type of frame is not quite as stable because you'll have more weight toward the back, so you'll have to mount more stuff toward the front. And you have a very limited area where you can mount your equipment, which is why I took all my stuff off the Q330 and built a eye-shaped quadcopter instead. And this eye-shaped quadcopter flies pretty stable. It's very stable, flies very well. And look at all the stuff I could put on there. I put my flight controller, my battery, I'm going to mount my camera, video transmitter, and so I don't have to build up. It's just one level. And the whole thing weighs about 620 grams or so without the battery. So it's fairly light, easy to build, and the ergonomics is very good, where you could just mount everything where you want it to on this one level. When I had the Q330, I had to put two, three levels, so I could mount everything on there because there wasn't enough space in the back and the propellers were getting close to the body, and so I had to build up. And so, which do I prefer? I actually prefer the eye-shaped quadcopter because of the pragmatic approach of being able to put everything on this one floor and I don't have to build anything up. And I like to have the battery sitting on top rather than the bottom because I find that it flies a little bit more stable when the battery sits on top instead of the bottom of the quadcopter. I don't even have to put legs on these. Legs, you know, will break easy. But if you have everything right here, you don't even have to put legs on them. So if you are going to build a frame, this is my personal opinion, I actually like the eye-shaped and the 120 degree shape. You might be able to have enough area here to mount everything on here too, although it would be kind of limited. This would provide the most space. This would be the easiest, and it flies very stable. So I prefer the eye-shaped if you're going to build your own quadcopter. Anyways, thanks for watching.